I'm Michael Popok, and you're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel, and I'm at the intersection where in Georgia, justice has not been denied. We have a new favorable decision by the Georgia Supreme Court, which has rejected the attempts by Donald Trump, MAGA, and the Republican Party of Georgia to install new rules about vote counting and vote certification that would have inevitably benefited Donald Trump and delayed the certification of the election in a battleground state like Georgia if the Republicans had their way. But the Georgia Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to take this emergency appeal of a lower court decision just a few days ago by Judge Cox in Fulton County, which declared as unconstitutional, void, and illegal a series of last-minute rule changes made by the MAGA-dominated state election board, what I call the Trump election board. They got the numbers in September, and in September, 3-2, they tried to cram down the throats of Georgians all sorts of new rules about vote counting and certification that would have allowed any one MAGA member of the canvassing board of a county to stop the vote count, to delay the vote count. It would have required hand counting of all of the ballots in Georgia, every precinct, every voting machine. And then that would have delayed things, of course, to allow for MAGA to run to court and push the button on all these dozens of lawsuits, some of which they've already filed in Georgia, in order to try to benefit Donald Trump in that state. This is all under the rubric of vote suppression. They're trying to steal your vote in Georgia. I can't put it any more clearly. And even the Georgia Supreme Court saw through that. That's a Georgia Supreme Court that's dominated by Republican appointees, by Republican governors. There hasn't been a Democratic governor in Georgia. God, I don't even know if there's been one since Jimmy Carter was the governor of Georgia back in the 70s. And so that they're not MAGA, but that Republican Georgia Supreme Court just issued their ruling. And what they said was emergency application to have an appeal expedited to occur before the election, denied. No grounds for it. We'll see everybody after the election, and we'll decide then whether the state election board, as Judge Cox ruled in Fulton County, whether it had the power or authority to do this or they didn't. Judge Cox ruled that the state election board does not have the authority, that they try to crown themselves Napoleon and make all these rules that only could be made by the General Assembly, the Georgia Assembly, the legislature of Georgia, not this state election board with 3 MAGA members on it. Now, those rules would have turned the entire Georgia election process upside down and created chaos and mayhem right where we don't need it during people trying to express their right to vote. One of the rules would have required hand counting of every ballot in Georgia in 2 days' time. Impossible. No training. With no training, no guidance, with the Attorney General of the state of Georgia against it, with the governor of the state of Georgia against it, with the Secretary of State of Georgia, all Republicans against it. And that would have happened. That's not happening now. Boom, off the books, because the Fulton County decision by Judge Cox declaring all of these rules unconstitutional is now going to hold at least through another 5 or 6 months over the election period. Another rule, reasonable inquiry, allowing any member of a county election board, even if they're outnumbered. So this gave MAGA outnumbered the ability for maximum monkey wrench, maximum sand in the gears. Any one of them can ask for all the papers and all the documents and all the votes and all the ballots and all the voter registration cards and play around with them before agreeing to certify. And Georgia Supreme Court said, that's interesting. Let's take a look at that after the election. So no rule, here's the headline, no rule changes, no voting rule changes from the state election board for this election to benefit Donald Trump. Not happening. Now, we'll follow up on this after the election to determine if in some time with cooler heads and calmer reflection, right, whether any of these rules will survive. One, does the state election board have the right to make these rule changes at all, or does it have to go back to the legislature of Georgia? I think it goes to the legislature of Georgia, but that has to be decided. And then if they can, do any of these rules, are they consistent with their obligations? And is there proper training in order to have an efficient, proper, transparent election process and counting process in Georgia? Just what we needed. Some last-minute rules passed in September to be applied now without any training by MAGA Trumpers. And the 3 Trumpers on the state election board are so Trump that they were shouted out by Donald Trump at a Georgia rally by name. as being pit bulls for democracy. Well, the pit bulls are going into a cage until after this particular election. We got enough problems trying to figure out battleground state results. We don't need last minute, like this is some sort of elaborate game of Twister like we were a kid. In order to vote and have them certified, it's like red, hand on red and foot on purple. And no, we're not doing that. This is all about the Republicans trying to take away your right to vote, rip it up, throw it in the trash can, and suppress your right to vote because they are scared of voting. And they try to mask that by saying voter integrity and voter fraud. It has nothing to do with voter fraud or voter integrity. 0.0001% of voting results in fraud. It's not outcome determinative. But they try to act like that's the disease they're solving for when they're really trying to commit voter suppression, which is a fancy way of saying taking your vote and ripping it away from you and throwing it in the trash can. Whether they do it in voter registration, burdens and hurdles, voter to register to vote, actual voting hurdles. You got to bring your great grandmother with you with your original birth certificate and 2 other forms of ID, and bring 2 people who know who you are, whatever those new rules are, making it hard to vote on voting day, on election day, making it hard to vote before election day, making it hard to absentee ballot, to mail-in ballot, to drop-box ballot, any of it. And then if that all else fails, make a mess of the certification process. Have the county boards and the election boards not certify, stamp their feet in protest, not agree to certify by the state mandated rules. Now, a lot of people outside of America may be thinking, wait, why do the states get to control federal rules about elections? Isn't this a federal election, Popok? It is. But under our Constitution, the states deal with the time, manner, and method of voting. And that's been well established by the Supreme Court, and that's not going anywhere anytime soon. That's why if you go into, no 2 precincts are alike in 2 different counties, and no 2 states are alike about how they vote. One's got this type of machine. One's got that type of machine. One's an optical reader. One's a scratch and sniff. I don't know. One's a old-timey ballot with a pencil. One's an old voting machine with a lever that you pull. Another one is a high-tech ATM-like device that gets double counted with paper ballots. It's all different. It's a mess. And it's all because of this constitutional provision that's been interpreted by the Supreme Court as giving the right to the states to determine all this stuff and on certification. If it were me, and I were the framers and the founding fathers, I would have been like, let's have the federal government run a federal election. That seems like a smart idea. And have it be uniform as to hours and devices and ballots and ballot counting. No, but you got this weirdo thing where you're grafting onto, you're taking the federal constitutional requirements related to Jan 6 certification and ballots and delegates and the Electoral College, which is out of the Constitution, and you're grafting it onto this mess of individual state and county rules. And of course you're going to get this. Shout out to the Georgia Supreme Court. You did the right thing. I don't know what you're going to do ultimately on the appeal, but for now, don't change the rules of the road and disenfranchise people before this election. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. Speaking of early voting, take a minute, hit that oval subscribe button, bring other people, do the same thing. We want to hit, I said 250,000 people by Halloween. We want 300,000. And more importantly, we got 12 million viewers after 12 million views of our work after just 34 days. That's because of me, I guess, as a curator. Putting my ego aside for a minute. It's because of you and the audience that we inherited over from the Midas Touch Network, which is our collaborator here. That we're not leaving. Those are our brothers. We're not leaving them. But we formed a new channel in cooperation with them, Legal AF MTN. You got to be here. Also, this is where all the cool kids are. This is where we have contributors that you enjoy from the Midas universe, like Karen Friedman, Nick Nifolo, and Dina Dahl, and new people. A whole new group of people like Court Accountability Action, and Shan Wu is coming over here with Under Color of Law. Legal AF MTN, if you're looking for it, at Legal AF MTN. So until my next hot take and reporting, it's Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.